Chapter 16. Morning tagged in after hours of wrestling with the fitful darkness in my own bed. I had been away from it for so long that it had grown strange to me. As the light filled the room and made it impossible for me to escape my reality, I kicked out, threw on a vest, and made myself some coffee on the stove. I was still replaying the previous day's error over in my head, chiding myself each time I leant in and kissed her. What a goddamn fool you are. I blew the steam off the surface of the coffee before I took a sip and let it sit in my mouth to cool. When it was amenable, I popped a few painkillers in with it and swallowed it all down in one. The heat from the coffee had stripped the top layer of film from the tablets, allowing the gritty texture to leave a trail all the way to my stomach. I finished the mug and set it in the sink before I hunted out some clean clothes and locked up. As I walked the length of the pier back to the parking lot, I saw a dark cloud hover over where what was left of my office roughly was, and remembered Celine and then her tail. I climbed into the Cougar and repositioned the wing mirrors. The street was clear, so I drove across town to pick up Marcela. She was waiting for me on the sidewalk outside of her West Hollywood apartment. When I remerged with traffic, I caught a glimpse of it. It was a car. I wasn't sure quite how long it had been with me, so I pulled in at a convenience store to test it out. "Why are you stopping?" Marcela asked. "Gonna get a soda?" I said as I exited my Mercury and went inside. I grabbed two from the fridge, set the money on the counter, and was back beside Marcela inside of a minute. As I twisted off the cap and handed it across to Marcela, I watched as the vehicle, which was now half a block ahead of me, slowed before pulling up at a curb. It was a dark green Chevy. As we pulled back out into traffic, I cruised up to the lights and threw a glance toward the plates. It was an airport rental. The driver sat stony-faced with his eyes fixed forward and a baseball cap pulled down low so it touched his sunglasses. I glanced his way to see if it was the cop from outside the motel in Burlington. The jury was out, but as my eyes returned to the road, I caught Marcela in my periphery. She was piecing it together, so I tried distracting her with a question. "So this guy I'm meeting after our class, what's his deal?" Marcela had scheduled some elusive paid work for my return. "Bruce Oakley," she replied, not quite buying the change of topic. "He's in publishing. Sounded a little cagey over the phone. Said he would only discuss the matter with you." "I can drop you off and swing by his office if you can write down the address." I jabbed a finger in the direction of the glove box. Marcela popped it, took out a pen and notepad, and started scribbling. I checked my rear view, then the wing mirror. The Chevy was still with us. She tore off a strip of paper and set it on the dash in front of me. "What is—" I started to ask. "License plate of the green Chevy you're pretending not to notice. Is that the guy from yesterday?" "I don't know. Maybe." I sat on the mat in the middle of a well-lit room that would have made a good gym. Marcela took up a position in front of me, and I held her gently in my arms. All around me were expecting parents, some newly loved up and going with the flow of a surprise in the first year of marriage, some deep into double digits since their nuptials and bringing an unexpected baby into a house that had just seen its previous youngest leave for college. Then there was us. Her working right up until the due date in order to save as much maternity leave as possible for when the kid was actually here. Me, a semi-employed gumshoe with no savings who lived on a boat. The pair of us were estranged from one another, as incompatible as you could probably get, and yet we were about to bring a life into this world. None of these other babies would know a world quite like it. I felt bad for our kid. Like she had been served a dud hand before she had even sat down at the table. The tutor smiled at Marcela as she passed us en route to the head of the class. You know, this is the first time I've been in this position, on a mat, without a sleeper involved, I joked. The tutor threw me a look that told me to shut the fuck up. I was a rookie in this environment. She was the champion, so I fell into line. We did breathing exercises, delivery scenarios, and I learned how to care for my newborn by playing with a plastic facsimile. When it was over, we exited through a chorus of chatter and hugs and waves. The other parents were beginning to bond with one another over the sole thing they had in common. Marcela had been going to these classes alone until this point. I wondered if they excluded her because they didn't want to risk catching the sad, single mom vibes they projected onto her. Or maybe they had been friendly, but seeing me made them reevaluate what they thought they knew about her. I took her hand and guided her down the white stone steps that sat at the front of the former municipal building that was now doubling as a multi-purpose community space. A quick scan came back affirmative. Dark green was still with us. I made like I hadn't noticed and walked Marcela back to my car. I had time before a meeting with Oakley, so I suggested we drove back to the ocean and had a late breakfast at one of her favorite spots. When we arrived, I had the maitre d' seat us towards the back of the restaurant, so our tail would have to risk coming inside to get an eyes on us. When we got a table, I excused myself for a moment and went to the payphone and called Marty. If he was serious about coming to work with me, he needed a license, which meant he needed investigating hours. I gave him the plate of the rental car and set him to work on getting a name for whoever was behind its wheel. By the time I got back to our table, food had arrived. It was the first time I'd seen her order more than me, and I had the oddest sense of pride. "I need to talk to you about something, Jack," Marcela said. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have kissed you. I just got a little... It's not that. I know we haven't discussed names much, and I don't want you to feel like your role in our baby's life has been minimized, but I really want to call her Athena, after my mother. I know I should have brought this up sooner." I smiled, then nodded my head. I couldn't think of a better name. Athena the protector. Athena the warrior. My daughter, my Athena. The pride that beamed from between my stubbled cheeks instilled a joy in Marcela. It was short-lived. "I'm going to be late for Oakley, so I can drop you off afterwards if that's okay, 'cause I need to go pick up my suit for Nina's service tomorrow." Marcela slammed her fork down on the table mid-chew, bringing about a momentary Mexican wave of stilled action and sideways glances from the rest of the brunch-loving clientele. "God damn it, Jack! Why didn't you tell me it was tomorrow?" "You don't need to be there, Mars." "The hell I don't. She was my friend, too." She leant forward as best she could across the table, the bump all but holding up her bosom. "You say you love me. You say we should be together, but every time there's a chance to prove it, to be vulnerable, you push me away. I'm pregnant, Jack, not fragile. I don't want you there because it might not be safe." That stilled her. "You think someone we know may have killed Nina?" "I don't know. I don't know what I don't know, Mars, and I don't like it. Nina blew off a show, was sneaking around and dug up something. Now she's dead, and someone has gone out of their way to make sure nobody can get near the truth." "You heard Suarez?" I said. "All the more reason for me to be there. Nobody sees the pregnant woman and it thinks threat. It's the rope-a-dope. You can be the right hand out there jabbing away, and I'll be the left hook just waiting there. That's not what the rope-a-dope was, but it's also not a bad idea. You have to promise to stay where I can see you, though." She scuffed. "You know I do what I want." I did. I caught sight of the clock by the front door, and it brought me back to the moment. I had an appointment across town with Bruce Oakley, and if I wanted to see a paycheck anytime soon, I needed to make it. I pushed out from the table, The rubber stopper on the bottom of the metal chair leg let out a high-pitched squeak across the terracotta tiled flooring. Marcela read the room and took one last mouthful before she allowed me to guide her seat out and help her to her feet. Outside of the restaurant, she tucked her sunglasses over her ears before pushing them up the bridge of her nose. She signaled over her shoulder to me that our friend was parked up a few hundred yards back. I saw and nodded accordingly. We were going to have to haul ass to Wilshire. I was interested to see how much high-speed pursuit training these burly boys had, so continued acting like I didn't know he was stepping on my shadow. I parked up at the feet of one glass tower while in the shadow of another and fed loose change into the meter. The L.A. sun was catching the buildings in such a way that it looked like an imminent state of non-existence for everyone, as bright light eviscerated everything in my vision beyond 10 feet. I leant into the passenger's side and asked that she not engage should our Chevy driving pal turn up. Marcela smiled, turned the radio station over to one she knew I'd never listened to, and put her feet up on the dash. I took that as compliance as long as I wasn't up in the heavens with the suits for too long. The ground floor receptionist walked me to the elevator, called it, and pushed the number for Oakley's floor, his own floor hovering in the sky. I rode up, and when the ping came, there was another person there waiting on me. Their tired young face, oversized adult clothing, and general demeanor screamed in turn. They led me down a long, air-conditioned corridor to a corner suite where they knocked twice before turning the handle and disappearing back in the direction from which we came. I stepped inside and was met by Bruce Oakley. He was in his shirt and braces with a disposable napkin tucked into his starched shirt collar. A hint of mustard sat in the fold of his mouth as he swallowed and offered me a seat. I took it. There was an ashtray on his desk. It was clean, but for one new butt recently extinguished. I gestured towards it, and when he gave me the nod, I took one from the deck in my jacket pocket and put the flame to it. "You're a hard man to pin down," Bruce said as he walked to the window and casually removed the napkin. "It was worth more in my old life," I replied. He made a noise that signaled both agreement and amusement as he returned to his desk. "I have a situation with one of my writers I'd like to get your assistance on." Yeah, I gave him a $100,000 advance based on a pitch. He was meant to submit a first draft 3 weeks ago, but there's been nothing, and any attempt to get in touch with him has led to nothing but dead ends. I'd like the pages or my money back. To walk away with neither would be unacceptable, said Bruce. "This author of yours got a name?" I asked. "Louis Locke." I was never a big fan of coincidence. I set my cigarette down and said, "You're the second guy this month to hire me to look for Mr. Locke. What's this book about?" Bruce's demeanor changed a little as he shifted in his seat. I could see him wondering whether he could ask the question, whether he should answer mine or whether he should try to trade one for the other. "The other guy is in the business." "My business? My old business?" I offered and corrected. "Frank McGuire, I guess. His girl Rochelle used to work for me," said Bruce. "So what's the book about?" "It's some wrestling expose thing. That's why I wanted to hire you. You know all the players." Bruce got to his feet, went to the cart, and fixed himself a drink. He offered me one. "No thanks. I have a pregnant lady waiting in the car." To his relief, I said I'd take the case. He buzzed through to his new PA, who came through with a list of locations where one would have traditionally found Louis Locke, and handed it to me. I folded it over and put it in my back pocket. I was about to leave when something occurred to me. "What was the pitch?" I asked. "Excuse me?" said Bruce. "The pitch. You said he sold you on the pitch. 100 grand on a few words. They must have been good ones. What was it?" He blew an exaggerated breath as though he was making room in his body for thought. I don't remember the exact words, but it was something like, "It was the Watergate of wrestling." Something like that. You might need to settle for the money. If he's showing people behind the curtain, or has guys on the record breaking kayfabe, I'll dunk him and his pages in Marina del Rey, I said. I'm a friend of the business, Jack. If Louis has crossed any lines, we can work it out. But right now, he's acting out of character, and I'm worried about him. Bruce reached into his desk drawer and pulled out $500 before extending it my way. He was looking to get me on side, and I needed the cash, so I let him try. On my way back down the elevator, I thought about Bruce's half-cocked recollection of the elevator pitch, and it worried me. For Louis, if he was unearthing the Watergate of wrestling, then there were potentially guys out there with a vested interest in keeping his mouth shut and his typewriter silent. I wrecked my brain trying to think what our Watergate could be. There were so many terrible little twisted secrets in my former business that I couldn't imagine which was the worst. Was Merle and his partners killing Boyd in the locker room over a debt worse than Mother Mayhem having her girls turn tricks to further her own career? Was it worse than Diamond Rudder, transporting minors across state lines and every promoter looking the other way? Was it worse than Ray Race hitting a fan so hard it popped his eye right out of its socket, or shooting up the guy's house with a machine gun when he threatened to sue? The elevator pinged and released me from my mind's nightmarish game of worst. As I exited the building, the Beach Boys could be heard blasting from the cabin of my Mercury with Marcela, doing her utmost to sing along. I climbed into the driver's seat, lowered the volume, and put the final nail in her good mood by telling her I had to drop her home now as I was on the job. "But we are having such a lovely afternoon," she swooned, "and now I have to work." "What's the job?" Marcela asked. "Some writer has gone missing. Gonna look into his life for a bit." "That sounds fun." She meant it too. "Can I tag along?" I had a bit in the back of my throat about how it could be dangerous, how this was business, so she should really go home and rest up. But then I remembered the dressing down she'd given me about being too separate. So I said, "Sure, let's go, partner." We tore out of Wilshire like we'd stolen something, Marcela whooping and hollering all the way to West Pico Boulevard.